So, thank you very much for attending. So for those of you who are aware or not aware, TechSolent, the whole objective is to try and find cool things going on in technology in its broadest sense in the Solent region. And we had a bit of a chat about finding companies that have got some interesting stories around the region, and clearly green and environmental stories are very cool at the moment. And working with the guys on the call, we've identified some quite interesting green technologies that we're keen to learn about. So the purpose of this session is very relevant to TechSolent, is to really just dive into 3 specific use cases that will be facilitated by David, to try and understand what the tech solutions are for these specific use cases, and then take it from there. Obviously, we've not got a massive amount of people on the call, so if anyone wants to ask questions, probably best leave it to the end. But I'm going to hand over to David, and he's going to facilitate a introduction from each of the companies and then see where it takes us. David, over to you.
Yeah, sorry, lost my mouth. Right. Yeah, so I'm really just the conduit to some interesting tech, but I'll just introduce myself and where I'm coming from, and then I'll hand over to 3 interesting individuals and companies that they represent, who can tell you a bit about their particular tech. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen, I think. Can you see that? Hopefully. Yes? No?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute, nodding.
All right, no problem. So, yeah, I'm David. I work at the University of Portsmouth, where I'm a reader in environmental innovation. But as part of that, and as part of the journey, I got involved with starting up a clean tech cluster in the days when nobody knew what clean tech was, and this wasn't as fashionable or as exciting as perhaps it is now. So, but yeah, so that's us, and it's very much a partnership with lots of different organisations, kind of centering on the sort of Solent geography, I guess. With something like 450 SMEs that sort of receive the newsletter, that sort of thing. But that's us really. And yeah, just to say a little bit. So 2012, this sort of collaborative organisation between businesses, local authority, and universities started, called it was called then Future Solent and became Future South, and that still is going and concerns itself with lots of stuff. But one of the things that it was successful in doing was grabbing some government money, regional development fund money, to support SMEs in the development of green tech and green innovation. And that was back in about 14. And that first experience kind of showed us what a critical mass, I suppose, an exciting critical mass of mostly SMEs, but innovative SMEs that were working on green technologies in the region. So the decision was made by the board to set up GreenTech South, which we did, launched it in 2015, and have managed to keep it going ever since, through thick and thin. And it got quite thin at times when, like I say, all of this stuff wasn't particularly prioritized, but then we kind of built up the COP and various commitments, and there's a long way to go. But yeah, it's probably easier to talk about net zero and green tech now than it ever was. So that's kind of us, and in the process of doing that, we've secured about £50 million of investment, which we've leveraged to invest about 55 million in different green tech projects, and safeguarded or created about 300 jobs and helped over 400 businesses, and long may that continue. So very briefly, that's the sort of regional clean tech cluster, GreenTech South. We also founded with some other regions, Clean Growth UK, and that is in existence now. And we're also the only UK member of the International Clean Tech Network. And I'll say something very briefly about each of those scales. So we are working regionally or locally, but we have national links and international links, which SMEs we're very happy to facilitate should that be of interest. So locally, being kind of having a university as part of the leadership group, we're able to provide access to university resources. We work a lot with local SMEs to support them wherever we can. We host or attend meetings like this. We can arrange pitch events for SMEs into large corporate supply chains or to local authorities, and just generally try and support local organizations where we can, where there's some green tech or low carbon elements to it. We have currently running some European Regional Development Fund projects, Emphasis and Low Carbon Solent, and 2 of the 3 businesses have had experience of those, and indeed through Clean Growth UK are able to support SMEs in different ways through different access to either expertise or facilities, or just collaborating together to do something cool. And on to that national level, so through Clean Growth UK, we've kind of pitched in with a cluster in Brighton and one in Liverpool, and over the last 4 years have been developing and feeding up what we're doing regionally and combining forces with them, to the point now where we're about to launch our pilot called Net Zero 360, which takes SMEs right through from being able to work out sort of their carbon footprint and stuff through workshops, innovation acceleration, Clean Growth Fast Track, and then on to finding other funding and collaborative opportunities to work together. So it's kind of an end-to-end offer that we've managed to develop. And then finally, because I need to move on and actually introduce the interesting stuff to you, the International Clean Tech Network. So GreenTech South is one of a member of, I can't remember, 17 clusters at the moment, but representing 18,000 SMEs, 80 cities, 50 universities or knowledge institutions. So that's a big deal, and that's really exciting. And so, there is an exchange program that is possible that, if SMEs want to visit any of these places, they can probably find you a desk or hook you up with somebody. So we can always make introductions that way. So if you're into export or import, that's always cool, or through partners. So one of the partners of the International Clean Tech Network is the Solar Impulse Foundation, and just go on their website and have a look at the 1,000+ technologies that are commercially available now in terms of efficient solutions, and lots in France, because it was started in France, but increasing numbers from the UK. And it's just quite mind-blowing to see what options are the growing options that are out there to kind of decarbonize and move away from oil, which is kind of cool. And then through the Solve platform, we're working with C40 and a lot of the big cities and looking at their challenges, and then they are advertised to SMEs who might have technological solutions or partial solutions and could work in partnership to develop a solution for, I don't know, the Green Cape, for example, was running some stuff. They had some really severe droughts in South Africa, in Cape Town, about 2-3 years ago. So there's a lot of work around trying, them pitching what their challenges were, and SMEs pitching in with technologies or solutions that might be able to help them. So just a really whistle-stop snapshot tour of where we're working locally, nationally, and globally in terms of green tech. So that's just a very quick introduction. So more importantly then, and I'm very happy to talk to anybody about that at a different date. Let me stop sharing. So we've got 3 businesses that are going to tell you about them and their technologies and what they've developed. They're all local, which is really exciting. So let me get out the road and introduce them to you. Lost my mouse again. Apologies. So we've got Paul Cole from an organisation called PowerQuad, and we've worked with Paul through one of the European Regional Development Fund projects. Before that, Dr. Phil Wu, who works for a company called Absolar, which was a spin out or was started after his PhD, I think, from the University of Southampton. But first, we've got James from Caldera, and he's going to tell you about his company and his really exciting product that they've developed, which effectively he tells me is a really good replacement for a boiler, and I think doesn't use or much reduces the carbon demands of a household or property, I guess. So over to you, James.
Thank you, David. Right, I've just got a few slides. I'm going to share. Is that good?
Yeah, I can see that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So here to talk about heating, thermal storage in particular for us, but it's really about heating. I always like this slide because it sort of electricity gets loads of attention to do with solar, wind turbines, but actually we use twice as much energy for heating in the UK as we use for electricity. And it's been off the radar for quite a while because it's not a particularly easy area to tackle. And in addition, I think we've historically had very low gas prices, which has actually made heat very affordable. I think probably the last 6 months have sort of changed people's view about that, but we regard heating as it's actually probably the most pressing challenge to tackle because of the fact that I said there aren't clear routes. You know, we want to put heat pumps in, but they're difficult to fit. So I always like to start with this slide. We're interested in thermal storage, and thermal storage is really about load shifting. So thermal storage can store energy when there's surplus, and you wait until you and move it to periods when you've got less, and you can effectively help to balance the grid. And again, there's a huge amount of thermal storage in the UK already. There's about 70 gigawatts of thermal storage, which is basically hot water cylinders. Generally, you'll find these in older houses. More modern houses have taken them out, which is a shame because it actually makes the houses harder to decarbonize, but a lot of people may have combi boilers and may have lost their hot water cylinders. And then on the right is the biggest pump hydro storage in the UK, but in total, we've only got about 30 gigawatts hours of electric storage, and that's all from pumping water up hills and very large installations. So with thermal storage, I think there's a lot around, and if you are of a certain generation, you may even remember night storage heaters, which were like very fat radiators that used to get heated up overnight on a cheap tariff. You'd generally be very hot in the morning and you'd be freezing by the evening. But you know, it's not what we're doing is, I would say, a twist on a relatively old concept. So this is what we're making for Caldera. It's our warmstone heat battery. Stores 100 kilowatt hours of usable energy as heat. So you can charge it when it's windy, when it's sunny. You can use an off-peak EV tariff. And it has the same output and temperature as a boiler. So we are looking to put this into homes where fitting a heat pump, which is normally the preferred solution for very good reasons, is going to be difficult or complicated. So older, larger properties, you know, with cast iron radiators and small pipes, it's not very easy to fit heat pumps then because you can't get the flow rates through. So we're looking to tackle these properties by, rather than going for efficiency, we go for time shifting and overall help to balance the grid. We are going to need a huge amount of flexible demand as well as energy efficiency if we want to decarbonize the UK. So the unit on the right, it weighs 1.8 tons. It's got a special material that's in the center of it. It's got a material in there that we've developed. We heat it up to 500 degrees Celsius with electric elements. And then it's in a giant thermos flask. So there's a vacuum around it. The outside is cool to the touch, maybe a couple of degrees. So I'm really, really pleased with the performance of the insulation. And then under the little hood is something that does the same job as your domestic boiler. So we've installed 10 of these last winter. I think I've got some, oh no, I'm gonna go back one, sorry. And just, okay, I'll just talk quickly about what's inside there. You can see a picture. So you've got the hot core, we've got a way of getting the heat out, and we've got the insulation. And we basically brought all three of these together. And I should add, this is relatively heavy. It weighs 1.8 tons. It's 1 meter wide and 1.8 meters tall. I'm not going to put it in your house. I happily put it in your garage, and it's very happy sitting outside. So we're particularly focused on homes that have got oil, and they've already got a large oil tank in the garden. So actually finding homes where you can fit it is not that difficult, but it's not something I haven't been asked if I'll put it inside, and my answer is always no. So these are some of the trial units going into different homes. They've been running really well, and I just thought I'd show a few pictures, and broadly where we've put them in, we've been able to just switch the oil boiler off. We've left the boilers just because these are first beta units, but it's been really useful 3-4 months of just running them and understanding all the issues and just fixing little problems. And then a little picture here just to show delivery. It comes on a lorry, we lift it off, we skate it into place or put it on direct, and it sits on a concrete pad, and you connect up to the main electric supply in, and we collect up to your plumbing. So thank you very much for listening, and happy to answer any more questions that might come up.
Thank you, James. What I'm going to do is move on to the other two businesses, if everyone's all right with that, and then that should give us plenty of time to ask collected questions. So if you've got a question, write it down, hold on to it, and we'll come back. So next up is Phil from Absolar.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share screen very quickly to go through a few slides. Hi, everyone. My name is Phil, and from Absolar. Very quickly about us. We are a university spin-out from Southampton University, and about 2019, we were recognized by the Royal Academy of Engineering, and to bring a technology that was originally developed at the Southampton University to the whole society. But what's really important is the mission that brought Absolar together is to help cities or help people living in cities to benefit from this trend towards sustainability. And we believe so because our technology using AI to help people recognize how they or their buildings can become more efficient and saving cost, saving carbon. And this is a technology. And we use Lidar to scan a whole city and to help people simulate which part of the roof is able to install solar panels. It can be visualized as flying over a city with a big scanning machine. And that scanning machine constantly collects rich information about the height information, not only about buildings, but also trees, the road network. And the really clever bit is we use that height information to create a 3D model, and then numerically position the position of the sun at different time of the day. So we know which part of the surface is able to receive a decent amount of solar radiation. So for example, the colors that we put on the roof represents the amount of solar radiation you can receive. So the bright orange bit is the sunny part. So south-facing part of the roof is able to receive more sun than the north part of the roof. But what's really important is we can use that technology to simulate shading. So for example, if you can see my cursor, in the middle of the screen, the two buildings are pretty much identical, the same orientation, same roof structure, but one of them is hidden behind trees. So if a solar salesman approached the household saying, you know what, your neighbor's got solar panels, so you should also have solar panels. And with our technology, we can say, hold on a minute, you can't, because based on the simulation, your roof is not able to receive the required amount of solar radiation. And then with this, we can not only tell you where solar panels can be installed, but also with solar panels put on that surface, how much electricity can be produced every day, every month, or over the whole year. So in summary, it's a citywide LiDAR scanning, and then allowing us to do solar simulation and designing and managing the installation of solar panels. We also use AI to help recognize the details of roof surfaces like chimneys, air conditioning units, or all those bits and bobs, that's really important in terms of installation of solar panels. So far, our technology has been used by over 25 local authorities and some really large organizations like the Royal Air Force. So with the help from the Future South and organizations like this, we aim to bring this technology to a wider range of society and help as many people as possible. I'm going to wrap here real quick and welcome any questions.
Thanks, Phil. I think there are other examples, but the only one I know of is Portsmouth. If you live in Portsmouth, you can go to Switched on Portsmouth, I think, and type in a postcode, and it will tell you. If you haven't got solar cells, the back end is Absolar technology. So I'll leave you to Google for that. So let's just move to our final speaker, and then there's plenty of time for questions and whatnot. So that's good. Which is Paul Cole from PowerQuad. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, David. Just going to share some slides. Okay, hopefully you can all see what get there. So first, thanks everyone for attending this afternoon. I know it's a lovely sunny day. Perfect for talking about solar and being renewable, but one of those evenings where we'd rather be in a pub by the river with a weeping willow and a nice chilled pint. But thanks again for everyone for attending this evening. So PowerQuad. So who are we? So we are a technology company started back in February 2018. Both myself and Gil Satcher have been in the energy industry for close to 30 years collectively. And it's our vision as PowerQuad to really bring renewable energy to everyone. We really want to help decarbonise our working world. We are engineers by trade, and therefore we heavily focus on product sustainability, data integration, automation of our products with other people's products as well. We want to help users make the most of their energy, particularly maximising their costs and their carbon savings, but also how they can get the most out of their stored energy. Ultimately, our goal is to provide energy to our customers as a service. So far, as I say, we were founded in February 2018. We are heavily involved in R&D and always will be. We partnered with some collective organisations, Clean Growth UK, GreenTech South in the very early days, and it's grown since then. We initially started with residential storage solutions. We were designing our own residential battery solution. This is back in 2018 when there was only about 2 competitors in the UK. Since then, it's been extremely difficult for us to break into that market without huge backing. It's still quite a tough market, but it is a growing market. And in the early days, we switched to looking at helping organisations, small businesses and SMEs and even larger businesses bring this technology to them, because there wasn't and there still isn't really anything that's purely targeted at businesses. Using our engineering skills, we also develop unique software tools, analytics tools, and most recently we've launched some new mobile products for outdoor events where electricity supplies are either scarce or unavailable completely, and for events that can last several days. Being as we are, we've run quite a few grants and projects around batteries, including the recent one from the Founding Institution and one for the Enterprise M3 LEP, which I'll talk about in a moment. Now I'll talk a little bit more about what it is we actually do. So, as I say, we do work with energy, we are in sustainability, and we work with energy and sustainability managers of organisations, both public and private sectors. Typically, those organisations had mixed assets, not all one sort of building, quite difficult for them to deal with everything in one go, all focus on how they can cut their carbon and cut their costs. And we notice that many don't own their own buildings, so it can be very tricky. And so we use our own skill set to help them. The first typically comes down to understanding their energy usage in detail and mapping that to a commercial plan, investment plan, what that means for them and what their real-term returns on investment, both in cost and carbon, means for them. That's quite an important thing, particularly as businesses start to look for things like EV charging, what does it mean for them, what does solar mean for them, and so on. Our core background is battery storage solutions, and this is a technology that has won several awards since we've started. The unique part of us is that we distribute our energy storage solutions throughout a building. We're not a single standalone product. It can be moved around, and it can help the idea is it can be with those businesses as they grow, as they adapt and as they change, which is always typical. Most businesses don't know what they're doing in 3 years. They might have a plan for 5, but no one knows really what they're doing in 2 years. So it's really good to help be with them for that whole time. We provide technologies that give them extremely high levels of data. It allows them to control their energy in unique ways, and it gives them those cost and carbon savings going forward. So I mentioned very briefly a little project that we worked on for the Enterprise M3 LEP. This is the base board and offices that we're actually in. And we provided a solution that was unique for this, where there are multiple offices, multiple companies, so multiple stakeholders. There were a lot of power cuts in the area. So these businesses are growing businesses where they need to be on the internet a lot, and it was becoming a bit of a problem. They were looking to save on their energy bill and hence an EV rollout. So our energy analytics skills came in very, very good for them there. And they were very driven on being low carbon to attract those organizations that are investing heavily, but also those who are growing in that sphere. This was quite a long-term strategy for Oxford Innovation who run it to keep them buoyant within attracting the very, very good companies that are going to grow. Final slide. Portable power has become a very, very recent and exploding market for us, where we help anyone who's running an event, from powering hot and cold, hot food stalls, cold drink stands, bands. Sometimes late into the evening, we can do bouncy castles. You name it, we've probably done it by now. Typically in the past, it's been very, very difficult for batteries to power coffee stands for 10 to 12 hours because they consume quite a lot of energy for heating water. And with our mobile background and our adaptable solutions, which can be distributed, we've moved that into an outdoors product. So this is a kind of a Lego brick set. You plug them all together and it gives you the power for your events. So likewise, that's the end of my presentation, and I look forward to any of your questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. I'm just changing to gallery view. I can't quite see everybody. But so there we go. So yeah, as I said, lots and lots of innovative businesses in our region that are doing really cool things around tech and that transition to whatever you want to call it, net zero or just a better way of living. And the floor's open for questions, comments, anything you like, really. I don't know how you want to do it. I can see some people. Phil,
I'm just going to wade in because I'm rude like that. So question for all the guys, really. But I mean, obviously there are non-eco-friendly options. So for instance, you know, the portable power thing is really interesting compared to a generator, which has lots of downsides in terms of fumes and all that sort of stuff. But how's the economics stack up? I know it's a terrible commercial question, but it's just interesting to see whether we're at the point where we're tipping towards the, you know, the more environmentally friendly price point.
That's a very, very good question, and it was one that racked our brains in the early days because batteries are still quite expensive on the typical road and turn investment. So talking to petrol diesel generators, we approached those who were looking and had quotes for petrol diesel generators for events, and they were typically sometimes quoted, you know, £700-800 for a generator hire for a day, you know, and you're nodding, you know, that seems reasonable to yourself, you know. It doesn't include fuel. It sometimes didn't include delivery and pickup. And if you wanted it for the weekend, Mr. Cole, oh, that's a whole weekend's hire. That's 2 days, you know, so it becomes 700, that becomes 1,500 quid. And when we talked about how much energy they're actually using, it's the equivalent to around 40 to 50 pounds per kilowatt hour for that hire. So when you look at what we hire as an alternative, you're looking at, because it's a hire, there's no capital cost, it's pretty much on par. But the benefits that don't come with cost are that it's silent. You know, bouncy castles, we could probably all think of when we were kids at bouncy castles, you've always heard the chugging in the background of the generators powering it. The first bouncy castle we did, all you heard was a shh as the pump was pumping air. It was surreal. It was incredible to hear. So there are hidden benefits that don't typically come with battery solutions. And everyone has commented, oh my God, how quiet is this? Particularly for an outdoors event in late into the evening. You know, you're looking at the stars. It's that. What price can you put on that?
Yeah, great answer. I suppose, James, same question to you, really, in terms of sort of, you know, comparable to.
I could have answered that quite easily 6 months ago, but as I'm not really sure what the gas, electricity, or oil price will be next year, it's a little bit harder. Broadly, before it all went a bit crazy, our off-peak time of use tariffs are they're slightly less than the price of oil. Gas and gas now, although gas historically we haven't looked to compete against. And our aim is over the life to have broadly a similar to probably slightly more expensive cost than oil we were expecting when we looked at it 6 months ago. And we would be significantly cheaper than a heat pump for the same property because you never repay the capital. So while the heat pump has lower running costs, it's the upfront costs can be 2-3 times the cost of installing one of our units. So hopefully that answers the question, but I think broadly in the longer term, we see our technology becoming much more valuable from about 2025, 26 onwards, when the large amount of offshore wind starts to come online that's being built in the North Sea. And it's that point you hit an inflection point in the UK. When we model it, you see this inflection point where a small amount of additional renewables, you get many, many more hours of the year when you've got a surplus of generation. And to put it in context, we think in 26, 27, there'll be about 12, it'll be about 10, it'll be about 1,200 hours a year of zero price electricity in the wholesale market. So generation will be outdoing demand. For information, South Australia hit the same percentage last year and had almost, you know, a very, very similar number of hours when the wholesale market was zero. And they're while they're sunny, they're actually very wind dominated, South Australia, the market. So they're probably there first. As a major economy, the UK will probably be number one because we've got very little interconnection to our neighbouring countries.
And sorry, just final follow-up question. In terms of the air source heat pump versus your solution, I mean, a lot of the criticism that air source comes into is it doesn't get up to temperature that well. I'm guessing, you know, if yours is at 500 degrees or whatever you mentioned, you know, that's not an issue. Is that real, or is that? Oh,
no. So it's there's a sort of combination of fitting a heat pump, but you know, some of that applies to us as well. Our experience to date is you go into most homes and their heating system doesn't work in the first place. So broadly, when you fit a heat pump, you then have to fix the heating system. You also do other things with the heat pump, which is potentially improve the insulation, change the radiators. So those are where we save money. And part of the problem is that in some homes, you know, all of your pipe work is under your very nice tiled floor and set in concrete, and you don't want to go and dig it all up. So, you know, there are certain properties, and we're particularly focused on properties that want higher temperatures. If you can heat your home at 50 degrees C, fit a heat pump. You really should fit a heat pump. You know, if you need it to be 70 and it's only hot as long as the radiators are on, you need lots of power and you only do it for a couple of hours in the morning, evening, fit our solution. And I think in the broader picture, we're going, you need energy efficiency. So we have to fit loads of heat pumps. So any property you can fit a heat pump, we won't, in a sense, touch. We just go, no, this is not our market. But we also know that we're going to need a huge amount of flexible demand, and heating is one of the few things that's big enough. So when you look at heating in homes, so currently, if you think a normal home for electricity uses maybe 4,000 kilowatt hours for electricity, an electric vehicle uses the same again, but your heating load might be 16,000. So if you electrify your heating using our solution, then 2/3 of your entire energy consumption is flexible, and that helps the grid.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Phil's got those questions off his chest. Has anyone got anything else?
I had a question for Paul, which is, what's happening with lithium-ion batteries at the moment? Are they going up in price?
That's a good question. They're pretty stationary at the moment because they're about the only thing that people can manufacture and ship worldwide. There's in the electronics industry, you know, it's no one can get the semiconductors, but lithium-ion batteries, the rush on securing supply has been fine. The price is coming down, and it will continue to come down, but at the moment, there's no issue with supply, and there's the price is still on point, really, I think, for the trajectory now. That answers the question.
What will replace lithium ion?
Oh God, good question. You know, there's been lots of new technologies coming through. You know, there's the sodium one I was reading about the other day. At the end of the day, it's going to be I would say it's the it's the one country that's banked the most investment on that battery is going to win. Technology always loses out to commercial. You know, it could be the best battery, the best everything. It will often always lose out to commercial. And at the moment, lithium ion of any type is winning on the commercial front. If China's building, what, three mega factories every quarter, what does that tell you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Ian's actually available, but if he is, he might be able to comment on this. As he is, I'm not sure whether he's actually there or not. We might have him. There we are. Look, Faraday Institute.
James, I wouldn't pretend to be here and not be here. Hi, Paul. Good to see you again. Yeah, thanks for that. As Paul said, sodium's there as a potential replacement for lithium, and that has an additional advantage that some of the other metals like cobalt are not needed, and nor is copper actually in the battery of a sodium-ion battery. But it's an early technology. There's one or two factories being built now to make those cells, but you can't easily go out and buy one. There are other technologies that are coming along using other metals, aluminium or iron, which might get the cost right down. But it's a difficult question to answer because no one's really worked out what the manufacturing route is. So it might be cheap materials, but it's difficult to manufacture. At the moment, as Paul suggested, the economies of scale in lithium ion is just dominant. We're seeing the cost of the metals going up, but the efficiency of the batteries and the cost of the manufacture is massively improving, and they're at the moment just about balancing out. My guess is in the shortish term, we might see some upward pressure, and then we'll see some downward pressure as everything scales up. I think it's going to go quite volatile. But there are other technologies using cheaper materials definitely in the pipeline. Oh, by the way, I'm Ian Ellerington, Howard Institution, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to say hello. I live in Hampshire, and happy to talk to anyone on the call.
Thanks, Ian. I've got another question, if I'm allowed to, David. I know I'm monopolising a bit here. I'm just interested.
Brilliant.
And that's, again, it's probably a question for Paul. Again, but I mean, Tesla, they've obviously sort of stolen the march on branding, and they've been quite clever in the way they've sort of created things like their Powerwall integrating with different tariffs and those sorts of things. I mean, can you see them having a wobble? They seem to have a proper march on in domestic.
What do you mean by wobble?
Well, just you feel like they're going to take over the world while he's building rockets to go to the moon and all other crazy stuff. I'm just interested to see what they're,
Tesla could, but I don't think they want to. If they wanted to take over the world, he wouldn't have released his patents. He wouldn't have given the technology away for free. He wouldn't be willing to work with other people in the way that, or allow people to help that transition. He has the power financially and backing wise to absolutely dominate the battery mineral supply chain, but he hasn't. So I wouldn't say he's on a path for domination. Are they likely to wobble in the market and miss a trick? Probably not. They're still a highly innovative organization despite their size, which is unique. And I think that is led really by Elon also having both a commercial and a technical brain in him. That keeps that one going. I think that they're a trailblazer, but most trailblazers tend to start things. They don't tend to be the ones that carry it on. And we're still in the early days of all of this transition in every form. We may be able to sit here and remember when Elon came up with the solar tile, but that's not been commercially possible in the long term. So, you know, like innovation, it's got to happen, and he corners that market. Whether he continues, I just don't see him being that dominant as everyone says. He's a very good brand and a very good products. Dominant, can't see it.
Okay.
I mean, what they probably won't be is a one size fits all. So unlike petroleum, I mean, petroleum is a wonder product. That's the point of it, really. At the moment, there's no single replacement that's going to match everybody. I mean, just the example of the air source heat pumps, it will work for some people, but not for everybody. So unlike, you know, if you're on gas, you have a gas boiler. If you're off gas, then you don't. You have oil, and then increasingly, because of the cost, people are transitioning. So that's the commercial element. I mean, storage for us is the key to all of this, because we will be generating. We tend not to be at the moment generating energy when we're using it. So storage is key. So, you know, the Isle of Wight, where I live, you know, at peak times in the summer, we are creating enough energy now from the sun to power the islands, but actually most of the requirement for energy, because of the heating thing, is in the winter or when it's dark. So, you know, that's the key. You know, whether another disruptive technology, hydrogen fuel cells or something, comes along, and we may well be looking back and you know, lithium ion was one of our transitions, same as LPG or whatever it might be, although that's more for air quality than decarbonisation, but there is a bit of decarbonisation that goes with LPG. But so who knows? But I think there is a strong element where not behavior change, but people being understanding and kind of coming along for the journey is going to be really important, and that's perhaps where it's lacking. There's quite you know, people are they're not very patient with things that don't work, or, you know, just so that's a big piece of work, I think. And but, you know, the renewables are doing amazingly well, considering that, you know, we're still massively subsidizing petroleum. So but, you know, we'll have to see. Sorry, somebody else. Christopher, you've just appeared, which might mean you won't say something.
Can I ask a question, please?
Depends what it is.
Firstly, thank you so much, guys, for agreeing to give us your time, and this just been awesome hearing your story. So thank you. So my question is twofold to each of you. And David, if government could do one thing, what would it be? And what also would you want us as consumers or interested parties or other innovators to be able to do to respond in a positive manner to that intervention the government's just done? If that's okay.
Shall I go first on that, answering that one?
Sure.
I'm going to be quite bold in what I'm about to say here. What the government could do. I know. Could you imagine it? The first thing the government should do, if they were to make this transition a lot quicker and a lot easier for everyone, and allow technology onto a market at a faster rate, abolish Ofgem. The legislation that Ofgem has and the power they have over the energy market is phenomenal. No other industry has a market regulator that controls that market. I can remember when the energy crisis was first hitting, I was having conversations with Centrica at quite a high level, asking them, you know, if they were to have, say, 20 to 30% of their yearly purchase of energy as storage, what would that mean? And I was asking this exact question to those who are about to go bust. And most of them turned around and said, well, the market doesn't work in that way. We can't buy energy in that way. That's controlled to a large degree. And they all said, well, because of the rules, it's easy for us to go bust, wait a few months, and then buy another license and start again. So the market controls really, really hamper a lot of the stuff going forward. What could us as consumers do if that was to happen? I don't think we'd have to do anything deep down. I think it would allow certainly organizations like Octopus Energy, who are driven on customer focus because that's their winning thing, to allow the market to move freely and competitively properly, that will massively reduce those markets. You know, we was just saying earlier, someone said that the amount of wind and solar that gets generated will mean zero price on wholesale. That still happens now. but no one gets that benefit because the market is controlling the price in that sort of way. So I think we'll see huge benefits very, very quickly on how new technology and certainly pricing points for energy can work very, very quickly once Ofgem really lose a lot of their powers. End of.
The regulation, that's a fair point. Regulation is a big deal. We're just coming off the back of a Department of Transport project. It's very short, 7 months, but it was the precursor. There's another one coming out, Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition. But even in that one, the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, they are not prepared. They have no idea what they're going to do. So they do see that the three future fuels for shipping is either going to be nuclear, ammonia, or hydrogen. They have no idea what to do with any of those three. And actually, just through that 7-month project, it's very clear that we are not geared up legislatively to deal with it, and it's just hampering innovation. But yeah, I mean, when you look at what the gas companies can do, it's a hell of a lot more. So we may see the gas companies moving into electricity and storage quicker than the electric companies can, or the DNOs or DFOs that have become, because they're just massively hampered. And we could have done so much more. And there's a great project on the Isle of Wight. It still exists, but actually one of the big, and just it's an obvious place where you can go off grid and have 140,000 people just working in terms of community energy owned company and stuff, and it would probably stack up. But you can't do it at the moment because of all the rules and regulations that are just not quite fit for purpose. So that's a fair point. But as with anything, I think you can see a future if you can clear out some of that stuff, and that is a kind of government, I suppose, job. Then the market will actually move, I think, in favour, and not just because the economics will work, but it's all the other positives that come with it that increasingly, I'm doing some work around sort of post-COVID green recovery and the importance and the value to both environment and society as well as economy, and people are kind of thinking a bit differently as well. And so we're seeing, I think, that some consumers want to move now and they're willing to move. They're seeing increase in electric vehicle purchasing and things like that, but at the moment it's still early adopters and those that are kind of willing to take a hit and work it out for themselves. So it's how you mainstream some of that, I guess.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's the early adopters are a key element to look at for where a market goes, and the early adopters for like the early feed-in tariffs and the early solar, which was very expensive, who were supporting the grid in that feed-in tariff, all turn around and go, I'm fed up with talking to the grid and the DNOs and the DS or whatever it is. You see, they're not typically farmers and they're fed up with it. They want to go totally off grid. I actually came back from a trip to Jersey and Guernsey. Now, Jersey and Guernsey are a very interesting energy market. They basically get everything from France at cheap nuclear rates. And there's only one organisation that does everything there. They buy and sell the energy to the islands. Each island's got one, and they look after the infrastructure. So they've got the power to do whatever they want to do, which is unique. So here you've got to talk about 10 people to do one thing. And what I'm trying to get at is if that legislation, if you map that to the UK, things will move because the market allows it to happen. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, legislation really does hamper where we could go forward.
If you could fix that, Chris, that'd be great.
Yeah, James, what do you need to unleash your market?
We need social and I'd say all the social obligations on electricity to be moved into general taxation. We need network charging to be less fixed per unit of energy and to be varied more with time and location. We currently throw away enough electricity in Scotland to power something like 300,000 homes. By power, I mean heat them and provide electricity carbon free a year, because there's not enough connection from the north to the south. So at the moment, it's actually very hard for electricity suppliers to offer low prices when the wholesale market is zero, because you have to add on so many fixed charges. It's a bit like having buying up by petrol at 10p, and the government says, well, it's still going to add £1 of tax on. So there needs to be more flexibility around that for what we want to do. I actually think the market can look after itself if the government get out of the way. I would probably support Paul's. I'm less fussed about Ofgem. I'm probably more concerned about the DNOs, who I think, you know, my view is they should have been nationalised. They won't be for lots of policy reasons, but they don't seem to be helping the transition to net zero. They seem to be adding a lot of cost, and I sort of think the government needs to take a slightly Marshall Plan-esque approach to electrifying rural communities where the only option is going to be electrification, and they need to go in and do the whole village in one go. Whereas we see a piecemeal approach, and my suspicion is that's going to cost us 3 or 4 times as much, because the DNO goes in and gives one house a bigger electric supply and then another, and then the transformer needs to upgrade, so we do that, and then someone else puts in some more electric cars and they come back 2 years later and change the transformer, as opposed to saying this whole village will be electric, and I'm going to put in a whopping great transformer and big connection, and we're going to do every house, and they can have EVs, heat pumps, you name it, and we need to drive the cost of the wiring and the distribution down, because we see it, we pull 20 kilowatts, we pull 90 amps on 100 amp supply, and we can see from the impact we have on local voltages, we can actually tell how strong or weak the grid is. And you can also see things when other houses nearby have got electric vehicles on. So, you know, I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be the distribution network. And I'm not sure that DNOs are actually the right organizations to actually get us where we want to go.
Great answer. And in introducing a new topic as well. No, thank you, James. What about you, Phil? What would make your world to shine?
Yeah, I just want to say that I totally agree with James that that one of the big bottleneck will be the transmission network and the capacity of DNOs or DSOs, and especially in solar, that the main obstacle at the moment is whether or not you can get G99 application and get connected to the grid. But talking about the government intervention, we are still trying to rectify the mess from the previous feed-in tariff. Some mess ups like the last time government introduced feed-in tariff encouraged quite a lot of cowboys to put solar panels on roofs where you shouldn't have solar panels. And that, to a certain degree, has damaged the reputation of solar panels. And a lot of people, early adopters, wrongly invested into solar, and that's got 3 layers of damage. This poor financial investment, they couldn't recover their investment. Then they tell other people that solar panel doesn't work, don't invest into solar panels. And thirdly, that the investment can be put into something like building refurbishment, which will be more sensible. So for me, yeah, I'm in no position of suggesting, but just trying to reiterate that we're still trying to rectify some mess ups from the previous government interventions.
Phil, is it the case that if you're a domestic property, you've got a right to connect to your 4 kilowatt system, but if you're a business, you've got more hassle to get? You haven't got a right. Is that too simplistic?
The limit is 3.68 kilowatts. Yeah. So if you're under 3.5 kilowatts, yes, you can get connected without. And then for business, if you're on a 3-phase, it's effectively 10 kilowatts. In every meeting with SSE or Ofgem, we say that they also want to increase the limit to like 50 kilowatt or so, because they are having capacities. Today, after April, pretty much everyone is thinking about putting solar panels on their roof. Of course, SSE cannot cope with that sort of demand. Yeah, so back to your question, yes, that's but at the moment, very, very low benchmark, yeah, for people to connect without any permission.
No, the only reason I asked is because on the island, a group of us were talking with the council, and we because we've got 3 interconnectors, but one's kind of it's knocked out by the gas generator. Then we've been on that active network for a long time, and that's been really prohibitive to businesses being able to get to solar. And one of the things we were thinking is maybe we could push your product, get every domestic property that is suitable to install solar, which the DNO would have to do, but we know it would give them such a headache that it might force them into doing something a bit better. But we didn't know if that was a good strategy or not. So
why don't we just produce a heat map, like a cluster of buildings in that band, then present that to the DNO saying, look, this is the result. If legally there's no way you can stop, but you should use this heat map to look into how to effectively increase your capacity.
Can I ask, where does nuclear fit? I mean, do we need nuclear? I mean, there seems to be a lot of investment still in nuclear, and just in terms of national strategy. Is that just because they're being fluffed up by people who donate to the parties, or is it genuinely a valid part of the energy mix going forward?
I think it's crazy. It's going to get built too late. It's very expensive. Yes, it covers periods when it's not windy or sunny, but it'll also generate very expensive electricity when we don't need it, because it will be windy or sunny. There are very strong vested interests pushing it, who often get annoyed with me when I probably say the wrong things. And fundamentally, the current reactor designs are not safe. You can't walk away from any of them and turn the power off and expect them not to melt down. There are new potential reactor designs that look really interesting, called Gen 4, which I think are really good, but they've got a long way to go to become commercial.
Yeah, it's interesting. So but if we didn't have nuclear, other than it's not sunny, it's not windy, you know, the amount of renewable could actually satisfy the full, if the grid was slightly better configured, it could satisfy the full requirement. Yeah, it's just
you need to consider the 1 month there's no wind, it's in the middle of the winter, there's no sun,
right,
and hence you need to tackle security of supply, for which I think I would use oil probably, or LNG, and very, very expensive but large amounts of diesel and gas gensets. So what you find is some years you never run them at all, and for what it's worth, we have enough storage capacity in our refineries and our LNG terminals to power the UK for about 7 weeks, 24/7, with 50 gigawatts of power. So we've got all these tanks. They're all going to be demolished when we get rid of oil and petrol. Actually, we should just use them. They're sunk costs. They know how to store the fuel. And I just think if you tackle it by having a very low cost form of backup power to cover these periods, then you just get on and install as much renewables as you need to. If you try and cover backup power with very expensive gas power stations, the numbers will look horrific, and you will go, we can't possibly afford to do this.
Yeah, interesting.
I was just going to add to your nuclear question that look at France. Look at France. They are predominantly a nuclear-powered economy, and they've been able to basically provide power to most of Western Europe through their excess that they generate. Talking about the Channel Islands earlier, they are supplied by France, and we're seeing what prices are 30 pence per kilowatt hour at the moment. And I was only there a few weeks ago, and they were up in arms saying it's really expensive. They're on 17p. Right, so it does carry quite a bit of weight if done correct, if done well. But nuclear is one of those things, I think, where it's a sweet spot that you've got to either have a lot of it or none of it for it to work. And I think the UK tends to go on, I will have a mix to secure the supply just in case. The only other thing I'll mention is the whole new technology about fission, that the energy from the sun that we're developing. People often ask me, well, that'll kill batteries, won't it? And the problem there is the demand. You might be able to produce all the energy you need, but it will be based in Cambridge. How are you going to get to Cornwall within 20 minutes? The infrastructure isn't there. So the idea is there is the need for these large power stations to underpin and distribute when it's quiet, i.e. when we're not in the demand time, in immediate demand, and batteries or other storage devices like what James does can carry that load to support during the daytime period. So the mix does work if the technology is allowed to work with it. which takes us back to legislation. So the nuclear one is still, it's open on me. You know, I'm not closed on it. I'm not open to it on fully. So yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
I think we've run out of time.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, and a
Okay.
few people have dropped off, so I think we are noticed in the end. So I mean, I think to reiterate what Chris said, I mean, thank you very much. Really interesting. You know, there is a lot to discuss here. James, I'd like to have a chat about your product. Whether I've got somewhere to store a 1.8 ton thing, I need to think about. But it sounds very cool. But I mean, it's just reassuring that there's people like you actually looking into this sort of stuff, because you know, we need it, don't we? It's just how do we get it mass market rather than rely on the government to fuck it up, frankly. But anyway, don't start me on that one. But so yeah, so thank you very much for your time, chaps. As long as you're okay and me publishing this on the YouTube, then I will do so. David, is there any other sort of comments you wanted to make?
No, thanks for the invite and to the speakers. So you know, there are lots of companies like this in the region, and yeah, anything we can do to support them and work with others to move things forward, and very happy to seek to do so.
Perfect. Well, I might contact you separately about that, because I think that's something we could do better, maybe from our side. So I'll give you a shout. Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening with your pint under your willow tree, and yeah, chat to you anon.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Cool.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Cheers.